So we'll begin with the youth panel. Our moderator and sort of leader for that is Marilyn Tickford. She has a background in doing guidance, co-op, vice principal, and still very active in the educational field. And so I'll turn it over to Marilyn to introduce our panel and guide us in this first stage of the evening.
Okay. So in the beginning, I'm going to say very little. I'm simply going to leave it to our panel to talk to. So first, I'd like to introduce the people that are sitting with us. So at the end, we have Khadija Wasim. Then we have, Khadija Wasim. And then we have Anand Shriram. And Ali Badru. And Ali Majhavdi. So I think we'll start with our girls. So Khadija, if you'd like to start.
Yes. Hi everybody, my name is Khadija. I'm in second year at U of T. I am studying commerce, and I haven't declared a specialist just yet, but I think I'll probably go into finance and economics. So I graduated in 2013 at George Van Hay Secondary School. So that's just about at like Don Rose and Shepherd, if you guys don't know. So my transition from high school to university, just to tell you a bit about me in high school, I was very, very involved, and it was fun. It was a fun time looking back, and basically we had the skills to, what I would say that I lacked in high school was the skill set that you need for first year university. First year university isn't as much about your academics as it is about you being able to manage your time, manage yourself, and how you're going to do well in school. And it requires a lot of skills that I felt weren't that polished throughout high school. So my advice would be to make sure that students, you allow your child or your student to make sure that they allot a certain time every day and they're on top of whatever they need to be studying and a bit above that also. So that when they're integrating or they're coming into university, they don't have any problem in their transition. The other thing that you mentioned before is scholarships. Scholarships are so important, and there's a lot of them. So a lot of people can get them if only they apply. And it honestly makes a world of a difference in first year, so you don't have to juggle that part-time job. And just those couple hours you can de-stress and not worry about something is honestly something that will make you feel happier in university. And it's just very, very important to know the resources available for students at university. And some of them just like, knowing that you don't have a guidance counselor anymore, but we do have registrars. There's like lots of different people, and for every need there's a different individual, but just knowing that there's learning strategists, there's someone that's there for your mental health, there's student groups that you should be involved in, and it'll honestly help you broaden your circle of friends, because sometimes people do feel isolated in first year as they don't have the same circle as they did before. So it's just really important to polish off your skills in high school so that transition isn't difficult. Apply to scholarships as much as you can, and just before going in, know the resources available at university and actually read the pamphlets they send you. I know I never did, I'm sorry. But honestly, if I had read them, they would have made a world of a difference.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so my name is Anand Shriram. I'm a first-year student at the University of Toronto. So I graduated last year from Lester B. Pearson, which is in Scarborough. So I kind of just stayed right around the corner for university. So I recently declared my major like 2 nights ago. I'm now a psychology major with a double minor in English and economics. So a little bit of everything. I had a really unique situation going into university in that I knew where I wanted to go career-wise. So my ambition, hopefully one day, is to get to law school. But what's unique about that is that I could kind of do any undergrad to get to that point. So I knew my long-term goal, but not really my short-term goal of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to get to law school. And so I'm really lucky. I have very supportive parents that obviously were like, just do what you need to do, however you want to get there. And I think what was important is that my parents are also very, very logical, and in that sense, they helped me realize that it wasn't just about getting into university and doing any degree to get to law school, but getting something that would ultimately benefit me when I do reach my long-term goal. And also being able to do things like have a backup plan, right? Am I going to do something where I end up with an arts degree and if I don't get into law school, what do I do with it, right? So sometimes, even though those are the hard questions to face, because I don't want to think about what if I fail at what this overall dream is, it was important to have people like, guidance counselors and parents ask me that. Because as students, I think we don't always address that. I think university is this place that we think about like, oh, I just want to move out, and I want to be on my own, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. And having people ask you the hard questions and be like, so what if it doesn't work? Because that's a possibility. And kind of preparing you that, you fail in university, because they don't do that for you in high school, was really important for me. Like I said, again, because I had so much space between my first year and my last. And so I took advantage of that space. Like I said, I'm doing a little bit of everything, a bit of arts, a bit of science, a bit of business in there. So hopefully that works out. And again, I had really good guidance counselors in high school. I found that in university, I held back a lot with going to guidance and with going to registrars, because I was like, well, it's a big university, I'm just going to be a number, I don't really want to talk to them, they're not going to know what I need. But I think the first time I did it was really helpful, because they again give you a more logical sense of being wise about your money. I had a guidance counselor tell me that, maybe it's better to drop a course, you can make back the money, you can't make back your GPA, and what's important, right? And how important is your end goal? And like I said, like having something to work towards the end really helps me, because I am constantly on the law school acceptance sites. What GPA do I need? And I know what I'm working towards because I know where I want to be. I have a lot of friends that came and they don't know about grad school, so it's not as concrete of a goal. It's kind of like, I'm just going to go to school and get a degree. But then you end up with like a 1.5 GPA and then no grad school gets you after, and you're just stuck. So I think, again, those are some of the questions that were important for me, was having my parents always ask me, so what are you going to do with this degree? It's not just going to university, what are you going to do after? Right? And so that was a big part of it for me. Yeah, that was the biggest part of my transition.
That's good. Thank you very much. So now you've heard from two students who are in. We're going to switch a little bit and talk about students who've been through or almost through, and the supports that are needed. So if you want to come in.
Sure, thanks. So my name is Ali B. I'll specify which letter my last name starts with, because it's two Ali's here. But I started a website called Campus Vibes, and that's what occupies most of my time here. And it's interesting because Campus Vibes is an organization which I hope will solve a lot of these issues around transition and also decision making. And the way this organization or this website does this is, we have this website that shows what student life looks like in different campuses, but also the other way is we connect them to actual university students so they can kind of talk, right? So there's that peer-to-peer influence aspect to it. So by way of background, I was also a former student at a school called Georges Valley Secondary School. Not only went there.
Wow.
And I didn't get into Durham Lake, Everyone was too populated, so I was one of those kids shipped over to GVSS, but I loved the school. It was amazing. And after that, I went to York to study business there. And my transition was also not as easy. I mean, I think that ultimately different students have different transition experiences and different stories. But I'm in a unique position where, the website I've built, there's a lot of high school students asking questions there. There's a lot of university students telling them this. And if I could just centralize two themes, just capture this entire experience from my perspective, it really boils down to two things. One is awareness. I feel that high school students, they're aware that, university is going to be a different world, right? But they're not always aware of every single thing while in high school. One example is we all know that when you go to university, it's going to be, more overwhelming by way of, studying. There's going to be a lot more textbooks, a lot more courses. But then they wouldn't know how to actually study for it. So they'll understand the first component, but they have no idea how to study. They'll just say, oh, I just have to study harder. But the real tip that a lot of university students tend to say is, no, you have to learn how to study, right? It's not always about just sifting through 500 pages of material, which hopefully you agree or disagree with me on. It's more about understanding, the slide structure and what the professor cares about, and then relating that to the textbook. But anyways, being smart about that, right? Another example is dorms. If you're going to live on dorms, we all know that it's going to be, away from home, right? But how many students know that, how do you do with roommates? What happens, you get to select, some universities allow you to select roommates, some don't. Some dorms allow you to do that, some don't, right? Different foods, etc., right? Especially when you have dietary restrictions. So I feel like, the one component is about awareness that I feel that, high school students need to work on. And the other component is also just getting the transition support. I think that the best way to get this is, again, through parents and also students, because, well, parents know what's best for their kids, and students are there, right? So that they've been through that and they're able to help. So So yeah, those are the two things that come out. I'm excited to be here, and I think that this will be a very productive workshop.
Thank you.
So my name is Ali Medavji. I'm born and raised in Vancouver, BC. So I did my high school studies there. I went to the University of Toronto and I studied commerce. So I had a specialist in accounting and a major in economics and graduated in 2012. I'll go a little bit forward in what I'm doing now, and then I'll go back to some of my university experience. So currently I work for PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is the world's largest accounting firm. And I'm in the audit practice, focusing on financial service companies, so hedge funds, private equity, real estate, things like that. I also am quite involved in the community, so I currently serve on the board of directors of 3 organizations. 2 relate to the University of Toronto, and 1 relates to the city of Mississauga. And I'm also the author of a book called Your Guide to Succeed in University, which I know some people have seen copies of. And so it's currently the #1 college book on Amazon, and it was recently named an award-winning finalist to the USA Best Book Awards. So going back to my university experience, I lived on campus for all 4 years, so I was away from home. And it did come with its challenges. I'd always lived at home, had never really done my laundry on my own, had roommates, some of those challenges that Ali brought up over here. And that had a set of challenges on its own, but it also came with a number of benefits. So one of the things that's really important, whether you live on residence or not, but it could be a little bit easier if you do live on residence, is finding mentors. So one of the things that I talk about in the book, and that really worked for me, was one, having a mentor that's someone a year or 2 ahead of you that's in a program that you think you might want to study. And that's really important because they can, give you tips on the courses that you're going to be taking, what the professors are like, so you can understand, how to strategize those classes and how to, get ahead on those. And it also helps you to figure out, is that really what you want to do? Because the average student actually does change what they're going to study, and I did as well. But that's really important. The other aspects of mentorship is having someone that recently graduated, and I think that's really important as well, because you'll be able to know what it looks like when you're, going towards graduation. What challenges did the students have, as they were going through their process? What would they have done differently, while they were in first or second year, and things like that. And then also having a mentor down the road, if you can find someone in the career that you'd like to, one day practice. And that's going to help you, figure out, again, like, is that really where you want to go? What do they like? What do they dislike? What aspects of those areas do you really, match your strengths, or, which areas or weaknesses that you need to work on, things like that. So I think finding mentors is really important. One of the things that I also, I realized, and a number of other students I think tend to realize over the course of their university or college studies, is staying involved. And so when you look at the high school dynamic, a lot of students are fairly involved. They're either in a sport, they're volunteering somewhere, they're getting those volunteer hours that they need to graduate, things like that. But then once you move to university, a lot of, either it's parents or other students or guidance counselors say, just focus on your studies, university is much tougher, so, put off everything else that you did and just focus here. But it's actually counterintuitive, because there's research out of Boston University that says if you work or volunteer 15 to 20 hours a week, you'll actually improve your grades by up to 25%, which is 1.0 on a 4.0 GPA scale, which is huge. And the reason for that is actually because you're going to learn how to time manage better. You're also going to learn how to use some of those things to de-stress. For example, if you're volunteering somewhere, you're likely volunteering there because you're passionate about it, or because there's certain aspects that help you recharge. And so those types of things are actually going to really help you improve your grades, not make them worse. And yeah, so those are the main points that I wanted to touch on now. And then we'll go through some.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'm sure that as each of you spoke, you might have some questions you want to direct at some of the panel members too. So we'll give you a chance to do that. But one of the things that we'd like to know from a parent perspective is how they might have helped you prior to going in. So if we could have Who would like to begin to answer that question? Anyone? Is there anything that parents could do to sort of, I know that you've mentioned your parents. Okay, could you please?
So, yeah.
It's okay.
It's
okay.
It's totally okay.
Yeah.
So basically, I was in a math science and computer science specialist program at Benny. So it's called MSc well now it's called MSc².ca, but in my time it was called MSc.com. And my sister graduated from that program, and my brother graduated from that program. My sister is in med school right now, and my brother is an engineer. So it was kind of expected that I would go into a similar field. And my mom and my dad had really high hopes of, you know, what one wants to be in your, like, whatever, and she wants to be maybe cardiology, Khadija, you know? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. And my parents have, like, to be honest, I swear, they've never pressurized me into doing anything, and they've always been supportive. But that psychological impact of them having, like, different expectations of me than I wanted to have myself, because I applied to commerce. So basically, that pressure is actually a lot, where you constantly think, oh, if I fail, or if I have to change my program, will that affect, you know what I mean, will my parents say I told you so? You know what I mean? And I understand parents too. Like, you're literally sending your children into oblivion right now. And it's like, you know, like, you have this syndrome where, like, I'm the youngest daughter. So when I went, it was literally like, Khadijah's going to university. And my dad was literally like, do you want me to take you to campus first day? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. But I know that they have this, like, they want us to be secure and everything. But to not set certain goals until you've talked to your child. And like I said, my parents were very supportive. But those expectations really do impact you on some level. And just to have that, your parents, like, you know, like, have a conversation with them earlier on, not just when they graduate. Like, in grade 9, that's when you start choosing your courses. The problem is, when your parents go to grade 9 info sessions, they're told, oh, grade 8 was so easy, grade 9 is going to be so hard. But to be honest, grade 9 is not that hard. So then they go to, like, oh, by the way, I had grade 10 to 12, so that was high school for me. So they're like, grade 10 is so hard, it wasn't that hard. So your parents have such high, like, it's going to be harder and harder, and you think, you know, what are they talking about? It's not that hard, you're just trying to scare me, I don't want to listen to you anymore, but university is actually harder. And it actually is. But because you've heard them say it so many times, it kind of loses its focus. But if you constantly, like, set goals independently, like, you know, like, I was in a specialist program, so it was in high school too, so it was kind of harder. But if you can sit with your child and be like, you know, what do you want to learn? Why don't we set goals to make that happen? And for them to have opportunities over high school to determine what they want to go into and what they want to do. And not be those students that are in grade 12 and it's September and they're applying, like, I have so many friends that applied to random programs because they had to apply. Like, it was just, they just spent so much money because they wanted to apply to something, and they knew that if they didn't, their parents would be on to them, right? But just sit with your child before this period and actually figure out what the child wants, and just, you know, like, encourage them to do so. And even if it is different than what you wanted them to be, you know, they'll still be great people if you support them. They'll still be great people regardless, but you know what I mean.
Okay, thank you. And I think Ali touched on that in his book. Goals, could you go into that just a little bit? You switched when you were went in. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I actually had a couple of switches in terms of programs. And so when I started, originally actually I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I actually joined the Air Force out of high school, had a 13-year contract, I had the option of leave after 1 year. So I stayed in the Air Force for a year while I was in school. But I actually had a really good mentor in my first year that I could always go to, and, you know, every week I would go to them and be like, you know, I don't know if I really want to stay in the Air Force. Clearly, probably not the best path, especially like being in Canada and, you know, some of the things going on around the world and investments into some of these technologies. So I'd go to my mentor and be like, I think I want to be a computer scientist. And then she'd ask me why, just keep asking me questions. And I'd go back home that night and think about it. And then the next week I'd come to her and I'd be like, I think I want to be a chemist. Like, I did good in the chemistry course in grade 12. And you know, literally like for probably 2 months, I did this every single week, and this kind of helped me, you know, think about some of those careers and learn about some of those careers and learn why I would want to do some of those things, what areas I wouldn't like about those aspects. But going back to goals, I think goals are really important, and one of the ways that you can do it, like create goals, like in high school, is looking at your courses and then, you know, coming up with where do you want to be, right? So, you know, if you're looking at law school, what types of grades you need, what types of schools you need to get into, you can find out, you know, where you need to be. And then even when you get to university, it might even be easier to set goals, but goal setting is a harder task just for most people. But it's easier to set goals because when you get to university, every single one of your classes is going to give you something called a syllabus, and it outlines every single test you're going to have for the next 4 months or 8 months, depending on how long the course is. It's going to tell you every single assignment you have to do, what that assignment's going to be. So you pretty much know everything that you have to do until the end of the semester, until the course is done. And that actually really helps, but it can also be pretty detrimental if you don't know how to time manage and goal set. And so one of the things that I do, and it can vary for different people, but most students these days have smartphones. And so if you use your calendar effectively, you can actually input every single one of those assignments and tests into your calendar. And everywhere you go, you'll get reminded, which is nice. But what I also do with that is, so I put in a reminder for the day that it's due, but then I also put in a reminder usually a day or two in advance of that. So that's kind of my last minute reminder if everything went wrong and I'm not done it yet. And then I also put in a reminder when I expect to get it done, which is usually the weekend before or 2 weekends before. And so, you know, it'll pop up on my phone on the Saturday. I'll know exactly what I have to do, like which assignments I need to get done, and then I can go through and do those. And that really helps me personally to manage myself. And the reason why I do it on a smartphone is because I don't always keep papers in the most organized fashion. So this way, it's all electronic, and I'll always be able to access it. So that's kind of how I set goals.
Thank you. And these are short-term that we're talking about, but long-term career-wise, would you probably say it's safe to keep your options open? To sort of think, maybe this is what I want, but keep it general as opposed to being very specific. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, of course. And I think, like I kind of mentioned this earlier, I think one of the biggest wake-up calls coming from high school to university is realizing what it's like to fail. And because, okay, when I was in high school, I was my student council president. And a lot of people are like, oh, wow, that's such a big deal, like you're destined for success. I'm sitting beside another like student council president and walked into my first class at university, which is 1,200 people, and I'm sure there was like 10 others there. And you realize you're maybe not the most special person, that it's okay, you're probably gonna fail somewhere along the line. So realizing that at an early stage just helps you, because you realize that it's okay, first of all, maybe not to get that 90 or maybe not to be the #1 anymore. But it also gives you room to leave yourself a cushion. If it doesn't work, how else can I be happy, or what else will I be happy doing? And I think that's really, really important.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to switch a little bit. Ali had mentioned the supports that he put in place with Campus Vibes and connecting high school students to university students. And I'd like the girls to just touch a little bit on the transition, and then we can talk about how you can help that. So if you do that for us.
Well, okay, I just did the transition. I'm finishing up in like 9 days when I'm done exams. But I think a big thing for me was I go to a very small campus, and it is mainly a commuter campus. So I knew a lot of people from my high school going into university. And for me, that helped a lot emotionally, because I had a lot of kids in the grade above me or 2 years above me, and even if I just kind of knew them from high school, it's a lot easier to go up to them and be like, hey, I know you from Pearson, can I buy a textbook off of you? Than going up to someone completely different that I didn't know. So I kind of lucked out in that sense. But I think that's one of the most important things, is getting to know upper year students, because as much as professors help you, having an actual student who is struggling exactly like you are at this moment that just went through it is probably going to give you the best advice, and they probably know the most ins and outs of university, to kind of give you those tips.
Okay, so in commerce, not everyone tells you they're not doing well. The class average may tell you it's 50, but everyone has a 90. No, I'm serious. Like, it's literally like, unlike Ananta, I went to, in Rotman, there's only about 700 kids. And these are 700 kids from around the world. 40% of these are international students, And out of the 60%, 25% are students that are not from Toronto, right? They're from different places in Ontario, and I've never been exposed to people that are not multiculturally aware and diverse. Because I grew up in Don Mills and Shepherd, born and raised. So basically the transition was difficult because now you're exposed to so many different kinds of people. And it's very difficult going up to people and saying hi, you know, but it's something that you have to do, you know? Like, the more isolated you are, the worse it gets, right? And I know a lot of people say, that the thing that helped me with my transition was I knew what I wanted to do. And for me, I believe in burning all of my bridges and making sure I get to where I want to be. And that, I know people say it's a bad ideology, but if that works for you, let that work for you. I feel like a lot of people tell you, oh, that's not a good way of thinking. But if that's going to help you get to the point from A to B, then you make it happen that way. And it's nothing wrong, as long as you can actually do it, right? So as long as you are kind of sure of your goals, it's okay to change your mind. But I'd rather do that in grade 12 before I paid $7K for that year, you know? I wanted to be a cheaper option, that option, you know, those choices. And I would really hope that during that, the hardest part of that transition really was being able to adopt certain skills. Everything, my first class was economics. I had never taken economics before. I don't know what happened, literally. Like, it was just 1 hour of constant lecture. They don't have that whole first day of high school where they're like, hi, my name is Nadeja, I do this, you know, my favorite thing is to read. They don't care. So basically the most difficult thing was you go into a room of 700 kids and you're just learning right off the bat. I didn't have a textbook because everybody told me to buy it later. I was so lost, but go up to that prof and tell him that situation. Mentors help a lot, but it really helps if those profs are your mentors. And profs care, not all of them, but most of them. I had a class of 1,200 kids. The prof knew me. I missed a midterm. I talked to him. He knew me, right? So it's like, as long as you connect with these people, they care, sort of. But you just have to make sure you connect with them, right? So as long as you make sure you connect with these profs, that transition is so much easier. Because now you do have that teacher-student relationship that you hated in high school, but you love it in university. And as long as that relationship is there, to have someone you can ask questions and someone that you're on a first-name basis with, it honestly makes the world of a difference. You don't feel that alone anymore. You're not just a number anymore. That person knows your name. He knows or she knows who you are. And he or she knows where you want to be, so they'll help you get there. Hopefully know where you want to be.
Okay, so I guess more than my answer, these are my case studies, right? No, seriously, right? Because there's hundreds of students who feel just as passionate about this whole transition. They feel just as passionate about this new world that they enter. And believe me, this is the best case study because, you know, the way Campus Vibes helps is taking these students, and I'm going to connect you to 5 Jody Manny students and Lester B. Pearson students, and you're telling them what you did not know. Because if there's one thing that's coming out, and I mentioned this in my introduction as well, is it boils down to the surprise factor, right? There are certain things you know, right? There's certain things you won't know, whether it's the grades that you mentioned, you know, how grades work, or you know, how professors, how accessible professors are, what the student culture is like. I mean, whatever the thing is, right? And it's the surprise that we need to cut in the system, right? And I think that's how Campus Vibes helps, because all the mentors that are part of Campus Vibes, the one thing they always say, and I swear to God, if I could get a dime for every time I heard this, I'd be rich. It hasn't happened so far, but it's always, I wish I knew this. Always. And I think you guys mentioned it too.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a, like, I always hear this from like hundreds of students that I've talked to or interact with Campus Vibes. I wish I knew this. Hey, why do you want to get involved with Campus Vibes? Because I want to tell the next generation what I did not know, right? So that's how it helps. What all Campus Vibes simply is doing is taking these case studies and saying, look, you know, you did not know, I did not know, so it kind of sucks, right? But let's make sure that the next generation is more aware, so that, you know, there won't be that surprise effect. They'll come to university hopefully more confident. Number 2, hopefully connected. We also mentioned that you want to know people. The reason you went to UTM or U of T, you mentioned, was because you knew some students from your school, and I think that's really important because it gives you that comfort factor. But that's not to say that I'm only going to UTM because I know students. And hopefully if you want to go to Queens and you don't know students, we want to be the place where you can get to know them, right? I'm also going to shamelessly merge his concept, which is, there's value in connecting not with just your own peers, but also peers who are in upper years, which means, are you part of the business program at Queens? Are you interested in, XYZ career? Are you involved in student life? You're the guy I want to get to know. And we show all those descriptions. So that's what we're trying to do. That's how we're trying to help. We're trying to say, look, whoever you are, connect with the relevant student mentor, and then, if you end up going to that university, you'll be less surprised, number one. And I think that's really important. Number two, you know people there. So you're comfortable.
Thank you. Just a sentence. Yeah, I just wanted to add to what he said. It was perfectly, if I knew this. Parents have to tell their kids that, well, not tell, but you need to nurture them in a way that they want to listen to people that are advising them. When you're in grade 12 and you have a 96 average and you're involved in everything, you think you're a boss. And you are, you probably are, right? But you don't listen to people when they're giving you advice. If you're smart, not a lot of people in that maturity way are, you'll listen to people that are telling you, oh, take your notes, do your readings, listen to your mentors, listen to older students, but most people won't do that. And it's the parents and the teacher's job to not make that student completely not wanting to listen to other people's advice, but open to these options and open to listen to other people and have to implement what they say in their lives. So, your job, guys.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Ali, who's written a little bit in his book about communication and making sure you stay in communication with parents once you get there, so that everybody's on the right track. So would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I definitely think it's important. For me, it was a little bit of a different situation because I was living on my own on campus. My parents were long distance. But it is very important, especially going through the process before you get to university. And so parents can actually help, by figuring out what does your kid need or the student need in terms of what type of nurturing. Are they the type that needs to figure out things on their own and have a little bit of those failures to be able to learn on their own, or are they the type that needs you to give them the answers? But if you give them the answers, you may not be there later on when they're in university. So you got to kind of balance that, right? And so one thing that my parents did pretty well, and they're both immigrants, and so they didn't have a formal education. Well, what they were able to do is ask me questions even if they didn't know the answers. And I would have to try to figure it out. And they especially just worked with career options and things like that. So they would ask me, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do that? How is that going to be beneficial? How is that going to meet your lifestyle that you want to have? Just asking all these questions, then I would have to go figure out, what are the jobs, what are the strengths that match, that career, what is the salary levels like, what is the type of education I need to get there. And by doing all of that research, then I was able to answer those questions. And then it would just keep happening. So one of the resources that's pretty useful for that exercise is career cruising. So it's careercruising.com, which most high schools, I believe all high schools in Ontario have access to it. So I found that tool really useful. For the student in terms of communication, it is very important to keep that line open, but I think the parent also needs to understand when to give the student their space and let them figure out things. And yeah, so I definitely think that was a big piece for me, where my parents were fairly hands off when I needed them to be, and I'm the type that tries to dive into things and figure out different ways of solving the problem, and then being able to do that. But my parents would always try to make sure that I was on top of things. So in terms of kind of those overarching goals, rather than diving straight into the classes, but it was, how are you tracking towards your tests next month, or your final exams, or your midterm exams, things like that. And that kind of helped me just to, see those placeholders, but then for me to fill in, the next month and how do I get there.
Okay, so we only have a few minutes left, and I wonder if you, as an audience, have some questions that you'd like to direct to the panel. Is there anything that you'd like to ask them at this point?
You mentioned earlier that the learning at how to study and how to learn at university is a lot different. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Okay, I guess I'll go. So number one, so you just get a lot more reading, right? And as the panelists have mentioned before, it is a bigger step. It's harder, right? Not only just by the sheer volume of reading and stuff that you have to do, but also you know I argue it's also a lot more competitive in university where there's all these students around you who are just simply more competitive. I think it boils down to just understanding how to shift, how you used to study versus what's strategic in how you need to study in university, right? And number one is just to really understand that, understand how students in the past have done well, right? Which is you don't necessarily have to read the whole thing, right? There's certain tips that you have to understand, right? It's about matching, what's given to you by way of materials and what's going to show up. I think that in high school, the biggest shift is you just read everything, and you expect that something, whatever's on the test is going to come from the book. In university, there's what you see in the exam is from select areas from the book. So I think that's the main learning, and you just need to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I think is really important with learning in university is one is strategizing your classes, and so. Your class there might be assignments. Some of those assignments you might be able to do in advance, and that'll kind of give you time for the other ones later on. But then you might also have like essay type courses. There might be test type courses, and then it's kind of breaking those down. And it's those test type courses. It might be that your professor prefers to test everything off of those PowerPoint slides, right? So maybe that's what you need to do. But you'd only find that out if you spoke to other students that have already gone through it. Or it might be they like to test specific chapters or specific concepts come up year over year. And so it's knowing those things inside and out. And then also for learning how to study is important. And I think it's very different from high school. I think in high school you can, like the average student I think can learn most things and get 80%, 90%. But when you get to university, there's just so much content. You need to learn like memory tricks. So you might learn you might have to find ways that work for you. It might be acronyms or silly sentences or creating mind maps. And so there's like different tools that the student can learn to be able to absorb content, especially when it's if you're taking biology and you have a 600-page textbook that you need to memorize for your final exam, things like that, where it is more complex. Or if it's economics, it's learning the models and how things shift based on like different variables. But that might be something that you need to do with like one or two study buddies. So you can ask each other questions and figure out different ways to do things and draw on a board and things like that. So it's trying to find out those little tips and tricks and study like tips or habits, right? Study with someone, or if it's another thing is you might not, like for me personally, I can never study at home. It's just something like, even in high school, I've never studied at home, so I have to study at a library or a coffee shop. And it's realizing those things. And for high school students, you might not realize all of that yet, and then you're just in more of a time crunch when you get to university that you need to figure those things out.
And I think that's an interesting point, studying together as a group as opposed to doing it individually becomes much more a part of the process. Anything else that anyone would like to ask? The girls are leaving after the break because they are studying right now because they're in the middle of exams. So is there anything anybody else would like to? Yes.
Yeah. How did you how were you able to deal with the stress, knowing that you had assignments, exams, and that sort of thing? Because I heard some parents that their kids literally crying, humble crying from all the stress. So I want to.
Been there, done that. So basically, the thing is, it's not that it is stressful. Right now, it's especially stressful because of the strike and the reweighting of every assignment and everything. But the thing is, you know what you have to do. Like you mentioned, we have a syllabus at the start, right? So it's up to you. The stress should be you making sure that you do what you need to do. And you need to remind yourself, whether it is to remind you the financial consequences, or the consequences, you know, like, because the thing is, parents don't know anymore, right? Once they send their kids, they don't know what the kid, when the test is. I have friends who want to like leave, or they don't want to be home for whatever day, so they'll say I have an exam and they'll leave, right? So, because it's just a matter of being able to manage your time. Parents allocating specific jobs to the child, as opposed to, you know, you have to clean the whole house today, the washrooms included. Just like, you know, balance their home life so that they're able to cope with everything. And keep a relationship that they can come to you if they are that sad, right? If they are that stressed, they're able to come to you and talk to you about it. Because hopefully, if you've talked to your mom or your teacher, your mentor, whoever that person may be, you'll feel better and you'll feel more motivated and positive going back and actually completing the assignment and making sure you get the work done.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, if I could just add to that. I know it's kind of, it's like this twilight zone. We don't really know. It's like, oh, university, what's it going to be like when they go there? I think the thing to remember is that your child is unique. And no matter how many books you read, how many other students you talk to, the way that your child functions, it's up to them and how they deal with that. When I finished first semester, I was a lot more stressed out and I did a lot less outside of school. I was just going to class, and so that overwhelmed me a lot. So second semester, I told my mom I want to get a part-time job. And automatically she's like, no, you don't have to. You don't have to stress yourself out. It's okay. But I had to explain to her, I was like, no, my personality is that I need to do other things. And then I'm not as stressed with school. And she's like, okay, that makes sense. So this semester, because I've taken on extracurriculars and I have a part-time job, I find that I manage my time more easily because now because I have less time to study, I organize it more efficiently opposed to when I was just going to school and I had so much time. I was like, hey, Netflix, right? So I think you got to remember that your child has unique personalities. If they have hobbies and if a weekend they take a break from that, that's okay. And I think that's the best way to manage stress is if you still let yourself grow as an individual outside of school.
Yeah, so for me, I actually think that there's ways to break down stress into ways that you can actually alleviate or eliminate stress for the most part. A little bit of stress is actually potentially healthy, especially going into exams. It might help motivate you a little bit. But one of the things that you can do is find other things to do. So part-time job, volunteering, something you're passionate about, something you can get, you think about other things, recharge. It might be going to the gym. That works for a lot of people, and exercise actually does help you de-stress. The Canadian Mental Health Association also talks about some other things, which is watching movies, talking to friends. Like if you can discuss your problems with someone, that'll help you de-stress. One of the things that I find the most useful, and I never used to do this before, is actually just not trying to remember things that you don't need to remember. So now I actually never do this. So whenever there's, if it's, oh, I've got so-and-so happening tomorrow, I've got so-and-so going on, I always actually just add it to my calendar or add it to my to-do list if there's certain things I need to do, and I don't try to memorize any of those types of things. And that actually has helped me a lot. I know a lot of other people that use that technique, and it's been really beneficial. So try to eliminate those things that you're just trying to keep on track with mentally, just trying to keep that in a more organized fashion.
Okay, I'm going to just,
Quick question I'd like to